Good morning, ILCA members. Today's webinar is entitled Turning Stars into Cash, Master Your Online Reviews, and I'm Scott Grams, the Executive Director of ILCA. This webinar is kind of ripped from the headlines. Over the past few years, we've been privy to a number of member conversations about negative online reviews and how to deal with them, whether those reviews are fake or they're legitimate. You kind of ask members about their brushes with online reviews, and out come the war stories, and definitely out come a lot of the battle scars. We've noticed that these reviews can come from a variety of different sources and directions. They can be from actual people, online avatars, ex-employees, bots, and even competitors. When ILCA posted a question a few months ago to Facebook and asked our closed member group about any brushes with negative online reviews, whether real or legitimate, members started to reach out directly, and the stories were pretty shocking. We had reviews posted from past employees, spouses of rivals, made up profiles using stock images, and so on and so forth. But all those member stories had one thing in common. The reviews were blistering, they were erroneous, and oftentimes the review sites will do nothing about them. So today we're going to walk through reviews, we're going to walk through review bombs, and the growing importance of your online reputation to you as a business owner and as a company. You know, as the sales engine from the last few seasons begins to slowly slow and return to normal, we can't forget that we still need to sell in the landscape industry and also manage those clients and how they post their reviews of how we did. Our presenter today is Matthew Olson. Matthew is an ILCA member firm, Signalfire Creative Marketing in Delavan, Wisconsin. Matthew also spoke at iLandscape 365 in 2020 as part of our virtual program. We had a prep call with Matthew, and he's a terrific guy and the perfect guy to talk about these subjects. And actually, I found out that if it wasn't for IT, he'd probably be in our industry. He grew up on a family farm and has helped plant hundreds of trees as part of a conservation effort up there. So I'm going to let Matthew provide a few words to introduce himself and Signalfire, and then we're going to delve into this exciting and terrifying future of online reviews and reputation management. Just a few final notes. Today's webinar is going to last about an hour. The webinar is going to be recorded and made available to all ILCA members, and then it will also be posted on Bloom. And Bloom is our new home for all of our recorded content, with about 180 sessions already recorded to watch with your teams on a hot day like this. Attendees will be on mute for the duration of the entire webinar. Matthew is going to answer questions via the chat at the conclusion of the call, and ILCA staff will read the questions to Matthew, and then he can answer it. And with that, I turn the webinar over to Matthew Olson of Signalfire Creative Marketing.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Again, a big thanks to you and ILCA for inviting me in to talk about online reviews. And boy, for the longest time, it has been the Wild West. So thanks to Scott and Anne-Marie for inviting me on. And here's kudos to all your crews who are actually out there trying to get work done during this blistering heat. So our thoughts are definitely with your teams. My name is Matthew Olson, and I own Signalfire. We're a creative marketing agency based in Delavan, Wisconsin. And we use a variety of tactics specifically to help create demand for your business. And one of the key elements of those tactics is online reputation management. And that's essentially using online reviews to help basically garner new business and maintain the connection with your potential customers. And so we like to use the expression, we like to turn stars into cash. And it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek expression, but it really does open up the world of how your online reviews can impact your bottom line business. And one of the things that has definitely evolved since, if some of you were present when I spoke in 2020, is that reviews are just becoming even more powerful in the buyer's process. And how powerful? Well, it's become just everybody. At most current, 98% of shoppers will actually go out and read reviews. And this might not come as a big surprise, but it doesn't matter if they're buying a bag of coffee, a new stroller, or shopping for home services. Reviews are playing an incredible element of influence over their buying process. And one of the things that kind of has evolved, especially over the last several years, is the review market is starting to condense down. And believe it or not, a company you may or may not be familiar with is leading the charge in terms of just how much is out there for reviews. Specifically, 73% of all reviews are placed on Google Maps. And you see the term Google Maps and you kind of scratch your head and say, well, why is Google Maps managing my business's reviews? This is because about a year and a half ago, Google Maps took over your Google business listing. And the reason for it is pretty clear. Most of the time, people will just pick up their phone and say, I'm looking for a coffee shop near me, or I'm looking for this. And more often than not, they're plugging that into their mobile map, Google Maps. And so that Google has folded all of that together into the Google Maps platform. So when you decide to log into your business Google business profile, you're going to find that you're on Google Maps. Well, that said, 73% of all reviews being on Google sounds pretty overwhelming, especially when you start looking at saying, where's the nearest competition? Currently, Google reviews, like I said, 73%. Number two in that realm is Yelp, coming in at 6%. Facebook, TripAdvisor, Angie's List, Better Business Bureau, all of these are pulling up, but they're still in the low single digits of representative of where people are posting reviews. So it's going to be no wonder as we kind of talk today a little bit more about how to manage your reviews, we're going to be focusing overwhelmingly on Google. To kind of borrow the expression, that's where the eyeballs are. And that's where people are looking. And you're going to see reviews are playing a more and more important role into how Google is actually ranking your business in search engines. So ultimately, managing your online reviews starts with this screen. When people are conducting searches themselves have changed significantly over the last several years. No longer are people simply plugging in one or two keywords or a quick sentence into Google to find things. They're in turn asking the search engine questions. And a lot of times it's even done by voice. So rather than looking at it as a search engine, Google is very quickly becoming an answer engine. So as we go through and start looking at this, it's going to be important that we understand just how much information Google is actually presenting. So when you turn around and ask Google a question, it's going to give you an absolute avalanche of information. And for your reviews, it's going to be important to understand where some of the tools and some of the answers are coming from, but also where reviews are actually starting to show up in everyday Google searches. At the top of a Google search, you're going to have something called rich results. This is going to be kind of a mix of photos that Google thinks are relevant, helpful videos if you're asking a question. It's going to give you shopping information if you're asking about a specific product. So those appear right at the top. And you'll see in most searches, you'll actually see the product's star ranking or review ranking right there at top. Second on the list is going to be a quick answer that Google might find for your question. This is sometimes called a featured snippet or related text. Believe it or not, over 60% of all Google searches do not end in a click. They actually end with the question being answered directly in the Google search results. This is called a zero-click search. And why this becomes important is because immediately underneath all of the questions that are answered is something we call the local pack. This is the true battleground for your reviews. The local pack is a series of search results showing the businesses that are relating to the search and how close they are to the person conducting the search. So you're going to go through and you're going to see within that, you're going to see everything from what their star rating is, what their number of reviews they are, links to their website, and other contact information. This is actually determined by a handful of criteria that we'll get into in a little bit. But you'll notice underneath the local pack is your first organic search results. So the days of saying that, oh man, we have got to be at the top of the page for Google searches for these key phrases, you'll see just how far down organic search results have drifted in an everyday Google search. So believe it or not, even only probably about 3 or 4 of those organic search results are displayed before Google says, hey, you know what? Here's a list of other questions people ask. So as you start going through this, reviews are starting to appear higher and higher in the search engine results and becoming more influential in terms of how your website and how your business is displayed. So when we look at this, saying, okay, well, my business is coming up in this local pack or coming up in a Google Maps result, what are some of the things that are influencing that ranking? Yes, you have the sponsored, the people paying for Google ads showing up on top, but then you're going to start seeing the businesses appear organically underneath that. And believe it or not, the number and quality of reviews starts influencing this. And so on average, as you start looking at this, the average number of Google reviews total for a business is 39. For those who are appearing in the local pack, the average is actually 47 reviews. Now, throughout, no matter what your industry is, 47 reviews is a significant number of reviews, but that's generally the average. So as you're going through and looking at saying, okay, what are we going to do to help influence how our business is showing up? Building Google reviews is becoming more and more important every day. And believe it or not, as you look at some of these businesses and their review standings and the number of stars, a 5.0 rating is not ideal. Believe it or not, consumers are most comfortable when you have a rating between 4.6 and about 4.8. So as we start getting into all of this to say, hey, I have 100 5-star reviews, consumers are actually leery of that because what do you mean nobody's had a bad review? And don't worry, we get into how do we handle those bad reviews in a little bit. But just to understand how these reviews have become so influential, Google's actually put out a nice graphic of saying what is influencing search results. And as we look at this, we can see that 10 to 13% of your overall Google ranking has to do with your business information and reviews. The quality, quantity, and diversity of those reviews are important. And having all those reviews just all pile on at once isn't always a good thing. Make sure that the reviews are continuing to come in over time, hopefully not in squirts, as we sometimes call it. So as we start looking at this to say, okay, you know what, these reviews are playing a significant role with 10 to 13% influence over everything Google looks at, it really tells you how influential reviews have gotten. So we're going to take a quick look at some quick ways that you can optimize your Google business account that will help keep those reviews showing up. First and foremost, make sure you have claimed your business on Google. And this is a lot more common than had it been a few years ago. Most people recognize that they need to log in to Google, claim their business, and go through the process. If you have claimed your business listing, it's a few things you can do to really kind of tweak that listing to make sure that it shows up with all the correct information and with reviews held out right in front. So once you're logged in, you're going to logged into Google as your business, you're going to see this little menu appear and kind of real quick, some of the things that are going to help. As we look at this, when your business profile is displayed, there's some things you can do, what we call quick wins, that can really influence how your Google listing and your reviews are displayed. The first thing you're going to want to make sure you do is add photos. And photos are one of those things that are super important for two reasons. One, yes, you can showcase your finished product and your services, but most importantly, you can boost consumer confidence in your business simply by showing, what do your work trucks look like? What are the uniforms or the shirts that the everyday workers wear, so they know when people pull up to their house to do work that they're immediately recognizable as your business. Make sure you confirm your services. Google's business listing gives you the opportunity to go through and list out all of the services you provide, and those actually get displayed and help with searches. Finally, sounds kind of silly, but verify your business location. Your address and your service area are all important and influential in showing up when potential customers are doing a search. Next, make sure your contact information is up to date. If your phone number has changed or if your website has changed, make sure that you add that information in there. One of the things that was just announced probably about a week ago is Google will also be starting to add social media links into your business listing. Making sure those are up to date are going to be helpful when you want to showcase some fantastic projects that you've completed. The rest of your Google listing has some information that, believe it or not, you're going to want to keep an eye on. First and foremost is this questions and answers section. This section actually is not controlled by your business. Individuals, potential customers, past, present, and future, can go in here and ask questions, but most importantly, they can also answer questions without your input. So it's important to go through for your overall online reputation to make sure that on a regular basis, you go in and check the questions and answers. A quick little secret: don't be afraid to have members of your team go in and ask questions that you can go in and answer that kind of fall under those frequently asked questions, or FAQs, that customers have. This can kind of reinforce the confidence that your individual business is fully expert at the industry and is paying attention to their online presence. Underneath the FAQs is your description. And this is kind of a nice text-based way to kind of overall summarize your business, what you do best, and your philosophy of customer service. Underneath that is the ability for you to promote specials. You'll see in this one, we have Signalfire's Google business profile, where we share interesting articles and information about marketing, but the same can apply for your business. You can put helpful things like, hey, we have a special on fall cleanup, or we're scheduling our snow plowing services for this winter. All of this information can be put in there and act as a promotional tool that will further help Google see that your business is paying attention to the profile and help promote it in the overall search results. So a quick checklist for you with your Google business profile. Make sure you schedule time to check the reviews and check questions and answers. Set reminders for yourself to update holiday hours, especially everything from the upcoming fall holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all of that. But also if you're closed on the 4th of July or you have scheduled downtime for your equipment maintenance, make sure you put those hours and that information into Google on a regular basis. Most importantly, add pictures of your work trucks, your crews, and your finished products. The more your potential customers can see your branding and identify it, the more confident they're going to be in selecting you to do future work. So a lot of this kind of sets the stage for what are you going to do about your reviews. And I know the number one question that gets asked, and believe it or not, we used to have a chat tool on our website. And the number one question we would get asked probably 6 to 10 times a week is, how can we delete a negative review? And sometimes it's an incredibly desperate situation where, hey, this review isn't correct. This review is a lie. And we'll go through how to handle that. But ultimately, the bad news is you cannot delete a negative review. As the business owner, there are ways you can kind of address reviews that need to be deleted. And we'll go through how the situation with that. But ultimately, there is no way you as a business owner or even me as a vendor can go in and delete that. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be some snake oil salesman out there that can say, oh, yes, we can delete it. Ultimately, the tactics they use are not approved by Google or any of the other review platforms and can ultimately get your business penalized in ways that is not going to be helpful. The biggest thing to remember is as you start looking at online reviews, we always like to recommend that businesses treat online reviews in the same fashion that you would from a customer service perspective, as if that customer walked into your front door, stood in your lobby and said, hey, this is the situation. Those online reviews become super valuable as long as you keep that kind of personal mindset in mind. So specifically, we can start diving in to start talking about how do you respond to a negative review? And with all of this, negative reviews can come in a variety of flavors. And we're going to use an example of a fictional review that is probably going to be one that hopefully nobody's ever received, but is going to be probably indicative of one that you're going to want to respond to pretty quickly. So Gary Anyguy is one of Google's local guides. That means he's posted a lot of reviews in the past. Reviews, photos. He's pretty active on the Google review platform. So his review is going to be pretty authentic in Google's mind. Gary said, I asked for yard cleanup and mowing. I picked companies from Angie's List and neighbor referrals. Bob's crew didn't show up on the scheduled date. When they did, grass clippings were blown into our flowers and the backyard was a mess. Tried calling, but got voicemail. In the terms of negative reviews, this one's going to be one that you want to jump on pretty quickly. But there's some quick rules that we want to talk about right out of the gate. These are kind of like, we talk about the golden rule of do unto others as they would do unto you. However, we want to look at these as saying these are never, ever, ever do. Specifically, never offer discounts, exchanges, or refunds. First, it compels people to then complain just to get a deal. And second, it actually violates Google's terms of service. Second, never asks a reviewer to delete or change their review or rating of your business. They may go in and do it afterwards. It's not an easy process, but they may go in and do it afterwards and hopefully upgrade you. But you asking that is also a violation of terms of service. And these are things you want to kind of keep an eye on, because getting penalized by the review platforms can cause huge problems for ranking in the future. Finally, never argue or try to prove you're right, no matter if you are 100% correct. Just out of curiosity, to illustrate this point, how many of you have changed anyone's political opinions on Facebook? Probably not many. No matter how right you believe you are, it's so easy for it to degenerate into an online argument that does more damage to you than ultimately even the initial review. So, how should we handle a negative review? And this is where we're going to show that you hear them. The simple art of understanding that you are listening to this review. And here we're going to break it down into an easy acronym. First, we recommend you take the high road. This means don't get petty, acknowledge the review, believe it or not, even thank them for the review. Secondly, express empathy. Understand that their service with your business didn't go the way they expected. So a simple act of saying, hey, I'm sorry this didn't go the way you wanted, regardless of the situation, can actually convey the right attitude to future customers. Show that you've taken action. By taking action simply means that, hey, we saw your review, we're doing something about it. And we'll go into a little bit more detail what that means here in a second when we walk through an example. Finally, offer a further resolution. Now, this sometimes get confused by saying, hey, well, we'll discount you next time around. Nope. A resolution is finding a way to specifically rectify the situation right there in the review. And so as we go back and look at Bob's Lawn and Landscapes review that wasn't so hot, we're going to find and craft a review back to Gary that is going to not only help alleviate his situation, but also demonstrate that Gary's customer experience is valuable to Bob's Lawn and Landscape, and that a good customer experience is what you strive to have outcome for any of your customers. So we're going to start with the high road. Hello, Gary. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. Sometimes a simple acknowledgement of, hey, we didn't know this went wrong, can go a long way to help alleviate a lot of frustration. Empathy. I'm sorry that our team didn't deliver to your expectations. And it's going to be important here to understand the difference between delivering what you were contracted to do and delivering expectations, because we all know that sometimes what a customer expects isn't always what was actually purchased. So we want to make sure that we understand and kind of walk that line carefully. Next, we want to demonstrate that action has been taken. This morning, I spoke with our team supervisors and the crew who were at your home. We strive to always be better. Show that you've had a conversation, you've actually done something about their situation already, even before contacting them. Resolution. Would love the chance to make it right with you. Can you call me, Bob, on my direct line, 847-555-1212. Now, a lot of times people will hesitate saying, well, I don't know if I want my name and my direct line or my cell phone right there in a Google review. And this is why it's going to be important why you should do that. One, it demonstrates that the business is a person, that you're really a normal human being, just like the reviewer is. B, that this situation is so important that you are giving your direct and personal attention to it. So as you dive into it and start looking at this review response, we're going to say, let's change perspectives and say, okay, the next customer that is coming to read your reviews saw that Gary didn't have a great experience. But then you then provided an answer on saying, hey, look, this is not normal. We want to make this right by you. We want to provide fantastic customer service. So now you've demonstrated that, hey, you know what? Even though this got a negative review, the business worked incredibly hard to make it right. Now, I know there's going to be some reviews that are bombastic, over the top, and really not quite the right tone that you really want to be nice to back. But by providing the right kind of empathetic response or a nice reply, it's going to demonstrate that the customer service is a huge component of what makes your business a success. And so even with some of the flagrant reviews, and we'll talk about how to deal with those a little bit later, for those negative reviews, a solid positive response and an invitation, most importantly, to take the next step of the discussion offline is important. And I know the question will immediately come up and say, well, what if this person is just one of those keyboard warriors that wants to get into an argument? We'll cover that in a little bit in terms of how to handle the what ifs situations. But hopefully, most of the reviews you receive are on the positive side. And it's going to be equally as important to respond to the positive reviews as it is the negative reviews. And so as we look at this, we're going to follow a very similar playbook. So Betty Any Girl just left a review, 5 stars, thrilled. Bob's did an overhaul on my front and backyards, removed all the grass and replanted it with beautiful plants, shrubs, rocks, and gravel paths. A beautiful and quiet oasis. They were full service, even bringing in a landscape designer for us. Fair price, kind and polite staff, work done in a timely manner. I highly recommend them. Now, I'm sincerely hoping that this is the overwhelming majority of your reviews. And responding to that should follow a similar playbook. First, in your response, you're going to want to thank the reviewer by name. Second, you want to make sure you use your business name in the response. Finally, add keywords to their experience. Where I'm going with this is, believe it or not, Google is indexing or reviewing individual reviews and having that influence your website and your reviews and your business listings search performance. So applying some search engine optimization ideas is a good idea. Next, make sure you personalize that review response around their experience. Suggest other services or products, and finally, invite them back. One of the things that you want to ultimately leave with a positive review is, would like to work together again. And so as we take a look at Betty's review again, we're going to start by thanking her by name. Betty, thanks for giving Bob's Lawn and Landscapes a great review. Next, personalize it. We love how the perennial plants complement the shrubs. This demonstrates that you are not copying and pasting review responses, something you should never ever do. But you've personalized it, you recognize the reviewer, understand what their project was, and really appreciate their situation. Next, suggest another step. those shrubs will be amazing this fall. Be sure to get some pictures. Would love to see them. So these positive reviews also opens the door to continue the conversation. So by time fall comes and you want to reach back out to Betty, hey, send us some pictures. This review is also opening the door for you to get content from them in the form of pictures or additional testimonials that you can then turn around and share on social media. User-generated content can be a huge boost to your social media efforts. And these positive reviews are a wonderful hunting ground for you to get that material. Finally, invite her back. Let us know if you ever want to add that water feature. So when we look at this entire review response, we can honestly say that, hey, we've thanked her, we personalized it, we've suggested how you can get more from it, and we've invited her back. So ultimately, we're in great shape to hopefully see Betty make another positive review further down the road. But we also know that, oh man, not all of the reviews go this way. And like Scott mentioned earlier, a lot of you have the battle scars of the online keyboard wars that reviews can sometimes bring. So what happens when it does go off the rail? And we're going to start with what happens when a bad review escalates, where they did not like your review response. They did not think that you're handling things well. So as it escalates, what should you do? First and foremost, stop. Take a beat. Sometimes it might even be a good idea to let it sit overnight. So when you do start replying to it, go ahead. If the reviewer starts escalating it, do not engage. Like we said about politics and Facebook, nobody ever wins a keyboard battle of intellectual or any kind of essence. Simply don't start. The first thing you want to do is invite them to take the conversation offline. Specifically, this is not the format that's going to make either the reviewer or your business look good. As the business, you have more to lose. Ultimately, again, provide your name and contact information, because to everybody else in the audience and whoever will read the review in the future want to know that your business takes this personal and wants to make sure that it gets resolved to the best customer experience outcome possible. So a lot of times when things escalate, taking them offline is helpful. But what about reviews that are wholly inaccurate? And this is where sometimes you have a few more courses of action that you can take. Specifically, again, someone posts a negative review, you know it's not accurate, you've never heard of this person, you think it's either from a competitor, you think it's just flat out fraudulent. Stop. Again, take a beat. Emotional responses never come through well in online reviews. So make sure that you stick to the facts. If the review is false, invite the reviewer to provide details. Let's say a flaming review comes in, and simply by saying, you know what, I'm sorry, we don't have record of your experience. Can you provide us the date and location of the project? Sometimes a response like that can immediately shut the thread down from the standpoint of they can't provide fake information. And for people who are reading those reviews later, it will help by seeing that, hey, you're trying to settle this in a best possible customer service fashion, and the review is just flat out inaccurate. You have the ability to report the review to Google as a fake review. And this is something that has evolved quite a bit over the last couple of years, and is Google's recognizing that, hey, there's things like review bombing, fake reviews, fraudulent reviews are becoming a bigger and bigger challenge. The biggest thing to remember is that if it's fake or a lie, it will violate Google's terms of service. But if it's just a bad review, it doesn't violate the terms of service. So you're going to have to be a little careful and kind of roll the dice with Google. So let's go back to Gary's review and better understand saying, okay, you know what, how do I report this? If you'll see the three vertical dots on the right-hand side of Gary's review, click on those and you can report the review. And Google will ask for some additional information, what's wrong with the review essentially. And it will begin the process of remediation. So step one, by flagging the review in your account, it will submit it to begin the review process. And because you're flagging in your review management tool, you'll be able to kind of say your side of the story. The biggest and sometimes most frustrating part about this is it is slow. It is not a fast process. And when I say slow, not weeks, it takes months. And nobody likes it, but that's just part of the process. Google will view the review as legitimate until it rules otherwise. So you can't have the review taken down or put on hold during the process. Once a determination is made, you only are allowed a single appeal. And so that, as you go through that process, will begin to give you additional information and then one additional course of action with that appeal. I'll make sure that Scott and ILCA has the link to Google has a full playbook on how to go through this. I have it here on a link on the screen, but we'll make sure that link is clickable when we get all the information to Scott and Anne Marie. With that one appeal, once that appeal is done, it truly is done. So what are the possible outcomes if you submit or report a Google review? First, you'll see decision is pending. This is the waiting game and part of the process of how long it will take. It may come back to say the review doesn't violate the terms of service. So that means, sorry, we don't see that this review should be taken down at this time. That is where you can appeal it. The outcome that we all hope for is the review is escalated to Google for likely removal. Now, the people who actually review this, and believe it or not, these reviews are reviewed by human beings, not by AI and not by other algorithms. For a review to be escalated, for it to be finally removed, it's got to go to the pretty high reaches of Google for this to take place. So as you go through and report a review, remember, it's a long process, but more times than not, it does have a pretty fantastic outcome. So review bombing. Now, review bombing ultimately is something that has come about that started with movies and video games, but has spread to a lot of the service industry as well. And this is where we want to be a little careful, because overall, review bombing definitely violates the terms of service. However, proving that you're getting review bombed is always a bit of a challenge. So we always like to kind of joke to say, okay, all of a sudden you're starting to see all these negative reviews pile up. In your mind, this is kind of what you're seeing. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And so you're going to start seeing things like that 1-star bar rating creep all the way across. But all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing some other components that really kind of will actually work in your favor to getting a lot of these reviews removed. Specifically, when there are a large number of negative reviews that are specifically intended to harm your sales, that's definitely something that you can flag. Typically, they are not posted by real customers. And so you'll see this sometimes when a lot of the reviews piling up are 1 star, and that's the only review they've ever left. A lot of times they'll list in their actual text of their review absolutely silly reasoning or something that doesn't apply to a project. So one of the things that as you're going through this, you also need to consider is, you know what, is this a competitor review bombing? Or another tactic that people use for review bombing is, are they unhappy with your business for another reason? So kind of sitting down and figuring that out is going to be helpful in terms of how to respond to the entire process. Next, as we talked about with how to respond to both negative and positive reviews, go ahead and follow that same protocol. And I know that might sound a little overwhelming when it comes to that, but by simply going through and saying, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't know what project this is referring to. Do you have a project location or a job number or a date where this took place? A lot of times by responding like that, it will start helping you overall with kind of fleshing out the fake reviews or the review bombs themselves. It will also help in the eyes of other potential customers, seeing that, okay, there's this flood of negative reviews. By the questions they're asking back, these aren't lining up. By going through and taking the time to report each of those fake reviews, it will also help get your reputation and your account remediated so you can better maintain your reputation. So if you are review bombed, what do you do next? First and foremost, don't complain online. Nobody likes a whiner, and it really doesn't reflect well on your business when other future customers are looking. Immediately start looking at, how do you repair your reputation online? Remediating the fake reviews, responding to everything is all fantastic first steps. The next step will be to request more customer reviews. So ultimately, you're going to dilute the negative with more positive reviews. And I know that kind of becomes an uphill battle, but we'll start looking at ways to, how can you start gathering more reviews? So as we start looking at this, I wanted to kind of leave you with some tips and ideas on what to do to help make all of this situation a little more manageable. Believe it or not, Google has a tool called Google Alerts, google.com/alerts. It will send you an email anytime your business name is mentioned. You can also set it to say, hey, only tell me once a week, or there are other criteria there. Where this is going to be super helpful is, rather than paying a lot of money to reputation management software, you can simply ask Google to say, hey, every time my business is mentioned in a review, in an article, in a blog, or anytime on the web, send me an email notification. And they will. Might be a good idea to also include the business owner's name and other variations or shortened versions of your business name to make sure those send you alerts on those as well. Next, be sure to encourage your employees. Your frontline service team and your field teams are going to be your number one source of getting new reviews. Make sure at the time of service that they request the review from your customer. That will prompt them more often than not. Probably, I think the number is a little over 60%. 60% now that if you simply ask for a review, more and more people will give it. Next, create a playbook. It can be an overwhelming task to look and say, how do we respond to all of these positive reviews? Wishful thinking. As we go through and do that, make sure you come up with a script on what is the format you want your reviews to include. Who is responsible for checking this in the office? How frequently do you want to check this? Make sure you detail the actions, the language, and the policies in a set document that you can train new employees or train future managers to help handle all of this. Next, and finally, share your reviews. If you get a fantastic, overwhelming review, don't be afraid to share it on social media, on your website. I would probably be a little cautious on using an automated tool that automatically distributes your reviews on social media, but those positive reviews actually help gather more good reviews than bad. So as you start looking at things with everything from positive review responses, negative review responses, and all those crazy what if situations, making sure that you maintain and stay on top of your online reviews is probably one of the best ways to ensure your social media and your online reputation management stays in great shape. So again, I wanted to thank Anne Marie and Scott for having me on here to discuss this. And hopefully I've not backed us into a corner, and hopefully we'll have enough time for everybody's questions. Scott, I see a few that have popped up in the chat.
Just in full disclosure, Matthew, thank you very much. We lost our internet connection here. I'm going to type a bad review to our internet service provider.
Oh, no.
So we missed about 5 minutes of the webinar, but it cleared our chat. But people were sending me some questions then. We asked them to send them to me directly. So are you ready for questions? Thank you very much. First of all,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The first question is, what are the ethics of having your current employees review the business? Does that violate any FTC or Google's charge?
That's a big no-no. So your current employees, even past employees, should not be leaving reviews. That does violate both Google's and most review platforms' terms of service. The primary reason for that is they're considered tainted or influential in terms of one part of the business or the other. So I would definitely not encourage businesses to look at former employees or family members of former employees, current employees, or the like, to leave reviews.
What is the best way to share reviews? Is it screenshots, or is there a better way to share them?
Couple different ways. One of the things, yes, you can simply grab a screenshot of the Google review and paste that as a picture into Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, what have you, and say, hey, we just completed this project. Really want to thank so-and-so for the opportunity to work together. This is what they said. The screen grab and a little bit of text describing the project can go a long, long way. If you are more artistically inclined and you're using a platform like Canva or any of the professional graphic design things, I would recommend creating a template so you can have these reviews displayed as testimonials in a more branded environment. But push comes to shove and you don't have a graphic designer on hand, just doing a simple screen capture of Google still works fantastic.
Another professional asked, how do you encourage more reviews? He mentioned he has a hard time getting people to take the time to leave a review. Have you noticed any incentives that work?
So you have to be careful with incentives because incentivization, or sometimes what's called review gating, can be a violation of the terms of service. So one of the things that can work really well is, again, hitting that timing at the time of service, saying, hey, you know what? here's kind of the PO or the work order, the paperwork you leave behind. It's Google will give you a QR code that you can put on your documents that you can truly just like tear off and leave with them. And the customer can then scan that QR code and go and enter a review straight away. One of the things that's also helpful is if you have an automated billing platform, whether it be QuickBooks or whatever type of platform, a lot of times it will allow you to have a follow-up email sent 15, 30, 45 days after the invoice has been delivered that you can turn around and then say, hey, please don't forget to leave us a review, and have a link appear in that email. And depending on your accounting software, you can do it in that. Or if you have some kind of email newsletter, you can also include a link, an article asking for reviews in that. Never be afraid to ask for a review, positive or negative. Sometimes the more reviews you have gives you the opportunity to showcase more of what you do, and kind of the good, bad, the ugly can also help generate and influence future business.
Another one, I always feel like I should not need to ask for a review because I feel it is not worth as much as a non-solicited review, sort of like needing to ask your date to compliment yourself.
Of course, the last time I was on a date was many, many, many moons ago, probably pre-internet. One of the most important things about asking for a review is not the fact that unsolicited reviews are worth more. Most people don't think about leaving a review. So it's just the idea doesn't trigger in their mind. So by asking for it, it will kind of invite them to, hey, oh yeah, that was a really good experience. Let me share it. So there's no way for your future customers who will read the reviews to know whether it was solicited or unsolicited. There's no way for them to know. But if you don't ask for it, the number of reviews are going to be a lot lower because, in all honesty, it's not necessarily a normal reaction to say, oh man, you know what? They did a phenomenal job on the fall cleanup. I need to go leave them a review. That's not a normal thought for most people, regardless of the service.
This question came to me directly. Are there types of businesses where consumers pay more attention to the reviews than less attention? For example, restaurants or service-based versus like someone reviewing the DMV.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine anyone giving 5 stars to the DMV. So believe it or not, landscapers, love it or hate it, are going to be at the forefront of being impacted by reviews. It's one of those service areas that are both loved and hated in equal measure. And so by having reviews, it's going to paint the picture you would like shown. So home services overall are probably one of the leading industries that are impacted by reviews. I mean, yes, your hotel, yes, your restaurants. Believe it or not, we do a ton of work in tourism. And believe me, the whole online review discussion is just completely on a whole new level. But as you look at that, anytime that you are dealing with a home service, it's really going to be impactful to have your reviews monitored and responded to thoughtfully.
And then the last question that came to me directly, could you explain the process of becoming a local guide? It seems like a lot of importance has been put onto them. They've become the tastemakers. And do people pay more attention to the local guide? You mentioned before about a 5-star review actually hurting you. What about local guides and how do they play in?
So when you have someone who's a local guide, and I'm not 100% certain on the criteria exactly of that. I know it's a certain number of reviews in a certain geographic area over a certain period of time. I'm not sure on the exact levels of that. But for consumers and shoppers, when they go through and look at that, when they see someone who has posted a lot of reviews or shared a lot of insights to it, their intrinsic expertise and value creeps up. So when you have someone who is, whether it be a 5-star or a 1-star or a 3-star review, but they've only posted one review, that doesn't carry as much weight and it won't come across as authentic as someone who is posted a lot of reviews. So hopefully that answers the question. I know I don't have the exact metrics on what qualifies someone to be a local guide, but the number and type of reviews that someone has left does impact, does influence how people read their review.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Matthew, I'd give you 5 stars, but that'll hurt you. So how about 4.8, 4.7? I just really want to thank you for lending your time with us in our industry on this hot day. For all of you, as a reminder, we're going to have a recording of this be available to everyone who registered, and then the final recording will also be placed on Bloom. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot.